Imagine a decade wrapped in silk and silence. The 1950s looked innocent on the surface, but behind the theater curtains, something darker stirred. Governments tightened their grip while filmmakers dared to test moral boundaries. These films were banned, buried, or burned out of fear of what they revealed. Here are 13 banned movies of the 1950s you will not believe ever existed. Number 13. The Moon is Blue. 1953. When Otto Preminger released The Moon is Blue, audiences expected another romantic comedy, yet what they got shocked moral guardians. The story followed an independent woman navigating love with wit and confidence, daring to discuss topics polite society avoided. Critics praised its charm, but the Production Code Authority refused approval, labeling it indecent. The studio United Artists released it without the seal defying Hollywood's moral law. Churches called for boycotts, politicians condemned it, and some theaters refused to screen it. Yet the controversy only fueled public curiosity. Lines formed outside cinemas as audiences demanded to see what was forbidden. Behind the scenes, Preminger fought censorship head-on, challenging the very system that had ruled American screens since the 1930s. His refusal to cut a single frame became a milestone moment. In time, the uproar faded, but its impact did not. The Moon is Blue marked a turning point in American film freedom, paving the way for directors who refused to bow to outdated rules. What began as a romantic comedy ended as a rebellion that redefined the limits of decency on screen. Number 12. Baby Doll, 1956. Few films in the 50s caused outrage like Baby Doll, directed by Elia Kazan. Marketed as a dark Southern drama, it told the story of a troubled marriage in a decaying Mississippi mansion. With Tennessee Williams' haunting dialogue and Kazan's psychological intensity, it was more art than exploitation, yet that subtlety was lost on the moral watchdogs. The Legion of Decency denounced it publicly, calling it sinful, while the Catholic Church urged a national boycott. Newspapers accused Warner Bros. Of producing filth, and senators used it as proof that Hollywood was poisoning American virtue. Kazan and Williams insisted it was satire, not seduction, but the label of obscenity stuck. Many theaters pulled it from rotation within weeks, and some cities banned it entirely without ever viewing a single reel. Behind the scandal lay a brilliant character study about repression and hypocrisy, but it was too honest for the era. Critics abroad hailed it as courageous proof that American cinema could face human complexity. Today, Baby Doll stands as a reminder that censorship often fears truth more than vulgarity. Its haunting imagery and moral daring echo far beyond the small southern town where its story unfolded. Number 11. La Ronde, 1950. From France came a film that broke through boundaries and nearly broke international relations. Max Opuls's La Ronde traced a chain of human encounters, each leading to another, forming a circle of desire and illusion. French critics saw it as poetic exploration of connection, but American censors saw moral chaos. When distributors sought release in the United States, the New York Board of Regents banned it outright, claiming it lacked moral value. The Catholic Legion of Decency placed it on the condemned list, warning audiences of corruption. Ophuls was devastated. His elegant direction had turned a simple concept into cinematic ballet, yet America would not see it for years. It took a long court battle for La Ronde to be imported in a censored form. Behind the uproar lay fear not of immorality but of emotional honesty. The film revealed that longing existed across all classes and that passion was universal. To conservative audiences of the 50s, that notion was far more dangerous than any act of scandal. Decades later, La Ronde returned restored and celebrated for its craftsmanship. What once symbolized moral panic now represents artistic freedom, reminding us that beauty often survives even the harshest silence. Number 10. The Wild One, 1953. When The Wild One roared onto screens, it did more than introduce Marlon Brando's iconic scowl and black leather jacket. It ignited moral panic. The film told of a rebellious biker gang invading a small town led by Brando's magnetic yet menacing Johnny Strabler. Beneath the roar of engines lay a story about alienation and post-war identity that frightened conservative America. Critics praised Brando's performance, but politicians and church groups condemned it as a guidebook for juvenile delinquency. In Britain, the film was banned for over a decade, with officials warning it could incite real-life gang violence. The British Board of Film Censors declared it too dangerous, while American censors demanded cuts to tone down its supposed glorification of rebellion. Behind the scenes, Columbia Pictures executives feared losing distribution deals and nearly pulled the release entirely. Yet the controversy only amplified its legend. Young audiences saw Brando not as a menace, but as a voice of suppressed youth yearning for identity. Years later, when the ban lifted in the United Kingdom, it drew massive crowds who wanted to see what their parents had been protected from. The Wild One became a template for counterculture films that would define the following decades. What moralists called chaos was, in truth, a mirror showing a society afraid of its own reflection. Number 9. The Blackboard Jungle, 1955. When The Blackboard Jungle hit theaters, it detonated like a cultural grenade. Directed by Richard Brooks, it followed a high school teacher facing violent, rebellious students in an urban classroom. Its unflinching look at youth delinquency and racial tension was unlike anything audiences had seen before. The soundtrack alone, featuring Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock, terrified adults who feared rock music would corrupt America's youth. Censors called it dangerous. School boards across the U.S. banned it outright, warning that it would incite riots. In Britain and several Commonwealth nations, screenings were halted after real fights broke out during showings. Police were even stationed outside cinemas to prevent chaos. Behind the uproar, however, lay a truth Hollywood rarely faced: the simmering frustration of post-war youth ignored by their elders. The film's gritty realism made viewers uncomfortable because it felt too close to home. Teachers protested, politicians raged, and the press demanded tighter film laws. Yet the Blackboard Jungle didn't fade. It roared. It became a landmark of social realism, inspiring a wave of rebellious cinema. What moralists called corruption was actually reflection, a mirror America didn't want to face. The film that was banned for being too honest ended up defining an entire generation's rebellion. Number 8. The Man with the Golden Arm, 1955. When Frank Sinatra accepted the role of Frankie Machine in The Man with the Golden Arm, he knew it would shake the foundations of film censorship. Directed by Otto Preminger once again, it portrayed a jazz drummer struggling with addiction, a subject that the production code strictly forbade. Preminger refused to seek approval and released it independently, causing chaos among studios and censors alike. Some theaters refused to screen it, while others faced police raids for daring to show it. Critics were divided. Some hailed it as brave social commentary, others called it moral decay. Behind the scenes, the film faced constant threats. Advertisers backed out, television networks refused trailers, and some newspapers declined to print its title. But audiences lined up anyway, drawn by Sinatra's raw performance. It eventually earned Oscar nominations and forced the industry to confront uncomfortable truths about censorship and social realism. The movie's success shattered the idea that films had to ignore society's darker struggles. It was banned in parts of the South, but celebrated in Europe, where critics saw it as humanistic art. The Man with the Golden Arm remains one of the first major blows against the production code's grip. It proved that truth, even when painful, could still be art, and that sometimes rebellion begins not with violence, but with compassion. Number 7. Fires on the Plain, 1959. Kon Ichikawa's Fires on the Plain was so harrowing that even war veterans begged for it to be banned. Set in the final days of World War II, it followed a starving Japanese soldier wandering through the Philippines, witnessing madness, despair, and cannibalism among the remains of his army. It was not propaganda, it was purgatory. Japanese censors recoiled. They claimed it dishonored the spirit of the soldier. Several theaters refused to screen it, calling it anti-national. In America, it was nearly banned for its brutal realism. The images of emaciated soldiers and moral collapse were too much for audiences accustomed to sanitized war stories. But Ichikawa's purpose was not shock. It was truth. He wanted viewers to confront the futility of war and the inhuman cost of survival. Critics abroad hailed it as a masterpiece, while his own country tried to bury it in silence. Over time, Fires on the Plain became one of cinema's most haunting anti-war statements. What censors once called disgraceful became revered for its honesty. In the ashes of censorship, it stood as proof that sometimes the most patriotic act is telling the truth. Number 6. Los Olvidados, 1950. Luis Buñuel's Los Olvidados began as a film about Mexico's forgotten children, but the world wasn't ready for its mirror. The story of street kids surviving in slums, stealing to eat, and dying in neglect was so raw that even the Mexican government tried to destroy every copy. Officials claimed it insulted the nation's image, censors banned it on release, and theaters were ordered not to show it. Newspapers called it a national humiliation. Buñuel received death threats and was forced to leave Mexico temporarily. Yet abroad, critics hailed it as genius, a rare film that didn't romanticize poverty but exposed it. The banning only amplified its legend. It won the Best Director award at Cannes, shocking officials who had tried to suppress it. Slowly, Mexico realized what it had silenced, a masterpiece born from compassion, not contempt. Los Olvidados remains one of cinema's most powerful indictments of social hypocrisy. Its haunting realism and surreal imagery transformed what was once buried in shame into eternal truth. What the censors feared most wasn't its darkness, it was its honesty. Number 5. And God Created Woman, 1956. When Roger Vadim cast Brigitte Bardot in And God Created Woman, he did not just make a film. He created a cultural explosion. Set in the sunny south of France, it told of a free-spirited woman defying social rules and male expectations. Audiences were captivated by Bardot's natural presence, but moralists were furious. Censors in America, Britain, and several Catholic countries banned it immediately. Critics accused it of moral corruption. In the United States, entire states refused screenings, while others demanded heavy cuts. The Catholic Legion of Decency classified it as condemned. Vadim defended his work as a study of innocence versus repression, but the fury was unstoppable. Even Bardot's rise to fame was shadowed by controversy. Some theaters showing it were vandalized by protesters. Yet the film's ban only amplified her allure, and God Created Woman made Bardot an international symbol of independence, while exposing how deeply society feared female autonomy. Behind the gossip and outrage, the movie asked a question that still echoes. What happens when a woman refuses to be defined by others? By the time it resurfaced years later, its once scandalous imagery looked almost gentle compared to its influence. What began as banned became timeless revolution. Number 4. The Lovers, 1958. Louis Malle's The Lovers arrived like a thunderclap that split polite society in half. The story followed Jeanne Moreau as a woman trapped in a lifeless marriage who rediscovers emotion during an unexpected encounter. The film's lyrical pacing and delicate tone masked what censors labeled scandalous immorality. It was banned in several countries, including the United States, where customs officials seized reels at the border. When a theater owner in Ohio screened it anyway, he was arrested and the case went to court. In a historic decision, the Supreme Court ruled in his favor, declaring that artistic expression could not be judged solely by moral outrage. That ruling changed the future of cinema law forever. Behind the uproar was a quiet film about loneliness and rediscovery. Yet, critics at the time saw only what they feared. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned it, and moral groups burned posters outside theaters. Mal himself said he had made a love story, not an act of rebellion, yet rebellion was exactly how it was received. Over the decades, The Lovers transformed from a banned title into an art house legend. It showed that intimacy could be cinematic poetry, not scandal. The controversy forged the path for films that dared to treat emotion as art instead of offense. Number 3. The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957. While not banned for the reasons others were David Lean's epic, The Bridge on the River Kwai faced censorship battles across Asia for its depiction of wartime collaboration. In Japan and parts of Southeast Asia, officials banned it, claiming it misrepresented their soldiers as either sadistic or weak. In contrast, Western audiences saw it as a masterpiece about pride and madness under captivity. The irony was that Lean's intent was anti-war, yet the film angered nearly every side. British veterans accused it of glorifying disobedience, while Japanese officials said it insulted their honor. Some theaters received threats for showing it. Political protests erupted in Tokyo, while diplomats demanded bans be upheld. Behind the scenes, Lean faced enormous studio pressure to cut scenes to appease governments. but he refused. Despite bans and boycotts, The Bridge on the River Kwai triumphed at the Academy Awards, winning 7 Oscars and redefining war cinema. Its haunting message survived censorship. The film became proof that even when truth is uncomfortable, art finds a way to endure through time, memory, and defiance. Number 2. Am a Camera, 1955. Before Cabaret, there was I Am a Camera. Based on Christopher Isherwood's Berlin stories, it introduced audiences to the chaotic world of Weimar nightlife through the character of Sally Bowles. British critics praised its daring, yet the British Board of Film Censors banned it immediately. They claimed it promoted immorality and political subversion. The film's setting of Berlin before the rise of fascism depicted a generation dancing at the edge of collapse. To censors, that honesty was dangerous. They feared it encouraged sympathy for moral decline rather than condemning it. In America, it faced similar struggles. Many cities refused screenings while critics were divided. Some saw it as courageous truth, telling others dismissed it as decadent. The uproar nearly ended the careers of its cast and director. Years later, when Cabaret emerged, the influence was undeniable. I Am a Camera had walked so that others could run. The film's banning ironically secured its place in history as the story that predicted the fall of innocence before the world plunged into darkness. Its quiet defiance remains a testament to the artists who dared to hold a mirror to their time, even when everyone else demanded they look away. Number 1. The Burmese Harp, 1956. Kon Ichikawa's. The Burmese Harp was unlike any war film before it. Poetic, spiritual, and deeply unsettling. It told of a Japanese soldier who, after witnessing the horrors of Burma's battlefields, renounces violence and becomes a monk collecting the bones of the dead. It was a meditation on guilt, loss, and redemption, and it terrified censors. In Japan, government officials worried it portrayed soldiers as weak and remorseful, undermining post-war nationalism. In the United States, the film faced bans and heavy restrictions for its sympathetic view of the Japanese side of the war. Some countries even labeled it enemy propaganda. Yet Ichikawa's film was neither political nor inflammatory. It was a hymn, a plea for peace at a time when both East and West were arming for new wars. Its haunting images of corpses, its use of silence, and its spiritual overtones were seen as subversive because they humanized the enemy. Despite the bans, the Burmese Harp found life abroad. It won international awards and inspired future filmmakers to treat war not as spectacle but as moral reckoning. Decades later, it is seen as one of the most humane films ever made, a work once feared for its tenderness. Every film on this list faced the same enemy fear. Fear of truth, fear of freedom, fear of seeing ourselves too clearly. The 50s tried to bury these stories, yet they still burn bright decades later. Which banned film shocked you the most? Tell us below and keep the reel of history turning. Like, share, and subscribe for more hidden cinema.